Welcome to another of our series of talks from visitors, and tonight we've really got a treasure for you. I'm delighted to welcome to Australia, in fact, for the first time. He told me last night, to his shame, Mr. Ajit Doval. Mr. Doval is one of the most formidable intelligence chiefs that India's produced. Amitabh has a lot of stories about Mr. Doval's, or alleged stories about Mr. Doval's life and experience as an intelligence operative, none of which will either be confirmed or denied. So he just spent a lot of his life as an actual intelligence operative in the field, in Pakistan, in other places where there are terrorists and other people in India. He became head of the intelligence service. He's currently the director of the Vivekananda International Foundation, and he's going to speak tonight on the challenges of global terrorism. So it's a great pleasure and honour to welcome you, sir, and to invite you to address us tonight.
Thank you very much.
So he will speak for a while, and then we'll have some questions and answers. Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson, Chairman of the Australia-India Institute, and Professor Mattu, who I had the occasion of knowing for many long years. I know this institute is doing a great job over here. The ignorance about Australia and India, and in India about Australia, probably needs to be bridged. And we do require the academicians, the scholars, the thinkers to really come close and bring that relationship in a much more stable foundation on which much greater things can be built. Thank you very much for your kind words, Mr. Johnson. Probably I don't deserve it, and the things that most of the stories which come are really not true. Probably they are made out because the media wants to make things interesting. Intelligence is a very serious game, and it's a game in which probably it's more of hard work, slogging, and not all that cloak and dagger business as it is made out to be. But anyway, well, friends, I've been asked to speak on the challenges of global terrorism. Before I start my talk, may I ask you one simple question? How many of us, how many of you in this room think that as compared to 2001, you are more vulnerable? I'm happy that, well, there's only one person in this crowd, and you are very justifiable that, firstly, I have a lot of respect for the people who are optimists. And you are not the only one. I think the President Obama, in May 2012, said that the goal that I set to defeat Al-Qaeda and deny it a chance to rebuild again is now within our reach. This is a very, very significant statement that is made at the anniversary of Osama bin Laden's second anniversary of his death. A month before, John Brennan, who was then Deputy NSA and Assistant to the President, said, and I would like to quote him, that for the first time since the fight began, we can look ahead and envision a world in which the Al-Qaeda is simply no longer relevant. Very, very positive, very powerful statements, and this audience also shares the view that a lot has been done. And let me first recount that how justifiable you are in holding this view. Osama bin Laden is dead. central hub of Al-Qaeda has been degraded. 34 of its top leaders, including Atiyah Abdur Rahman, Badr Mansoor, Aslam Awan, Khalid Sheikh, Ilyas Kashmiri, they have been killed or imprisoned. The Arab leadership, the central core of Al-Qaeda, does not exist. So there is a serious degradation of the leadership. Secondly, the organization is in a disarray. Its striking capability has been eroded. It has not been able to independently take any major terrorist action since 2001. I'm talking about Central Al-Qaeda, Brigade 55 and 303 and others, except Ilyas Kashmiri's few of the operations that he took, but that is before he had joined Al-Qaeda. I am not talking about the franchised groups of Al-Qaeda, on which I will come a little later. I am talking about the central core of Al-Qaeda. Its financing channels have been stopped. Most of its bank accounts have been frozen. So the ability for it to raise the funds have been seriously blocked. So I think there are very good reasons. But in addition to that, what goes in support of the opinion of the majority in this room is the robust response of the international community. Since September 2001, there had been a series of UN resolutions, and all resolutions were accepted without any resistance or without any reservations by all countries. Resolutions 1368, 1373, 1540, 1566, which all were aimed at containing terrorism, which meant that the states will not give any support, any sanctuaries, any access, any place for them. The funding were to be blocked, the resources and the weapons had to be denied to them. All these things were done, and a large number of countries have complied with that. It also meant they're building up the domestic laws in consonance with the requirements of meeting the threat of international challenge, where each country will consider any terrorist of any country as a terrorist that is directing or targeting that country itself. Now, which meant that if a Somalian terrorist is thinking of striking at Tanzania and is planning it in Delhi, it will be construed as if the Delhi was the target. And we will take the action, physical action, the legal action accordingly. So there had been a lot of international cooperation. There have been a large number of the joint working groups. And of course, the towering thing was the Operation Enduring Freedom, in which many countries of the world, led by the United States, took the physical battle to the place which was their main center, that was in Afghanistan. Then there were a lot of bilateral arrangements. Many countries together found various instrumentalities by which they were to cooperate with each other to contain terrorism. But most important thing that has happened in the last 12, 13 years is that even small countries of the world have built up their capabilities considerably than what they existed in the past. Whether it is immigration control, whether it is domestic laws, whether it is a technology upgradation, it is a biometrics, it is a specially trained forces. All the countries I find, most of the bigger countries at least I have been visiting, I find that for some of the special forces are extremely well equipped and very well trained to come up with any terrorist situation. Intelligence capabilities, I think, well, we see under the sense that millions of communications by either it is through the cyberspace or it is through the physical lines or it is through the satellite communications and others, they have been brought onto this thing, and the legal frameworks have been brought. Now, seeing all this, putting it on a broad frame, I think there is quite a justifiable claim of the US policymakers that lot has been done. It doesn't mean that, well, there's no scope for improvement. There's nothing so good which cannot be improved. But my problem today is that I don't agree with this view. And I agree with the minority view. All of you are much more vulnerable today than you were in 2001. Everything that is said notwithstanding. And that is the central theme of what I'm going to talk to you. I will ask you at the end of it whether you still hold the view or you have changed your view. Well, friends, if you recall, that a very significant statement was made in the Congress by President Bush on September 20, 2001. In that he said, or he announced, the global war on terror to fight international terrorism designated Al-Qaeda and its associates as axis of evil and a promise to degrade and wipe them out. So this is the goalpost. If we have got to judge the success or a failure of this entire national, international, bilateral arrangement efforts, we will have to judge it from this thing of what exactly was the goalpost that we wanted to achieve. Now, coming to the tangibles, ISAF went to Afghanistan, Taliban was ousted, Al-Qaeda senior leadership was almost finished and could have been totally wiped out had Pakistan not given them the sanctuaries. Had from the Tora Bora, when from three flanks they were covered by this thing, one flank which was facing towards the Pakistan was given to the Pakistani army to take care of. That is the route through which they were taken to Pakistan and thereafter given the sanctuaries. But anyway, there was this thing on that. Democracy was established in Afghanistan. The democracy was established, which was supported by the tribal elders, the Islamic district, the Loya Jirga, unanimously. And I think in last 11 years, there has been a lot of economic and social development that has taken place. And a professional army has been created, the Afghan National Army, to which the international effort is spending about $4 billion a year. And an Afghan National Police and the Afghan Intelligence Service has been created. So these were, within that goalpost, the achievements. But there is a little problem. And to appreciate that problem, I would like to tell you briefly about what this new warfare is all about and what are its inherent problems. And just three of them. I don't want to make it a talk on counterterrorism mechanisms and tactics. One of the important things in any fight is defining your goal, defining your military objective or a security objective. Now, as far as the tangible security or a military objectives are concerned, they have been achieved. But what was promised were the intangible as well. That is, Taliban will be ousted, Al-Qaeda will be degraded. These were there. But we will create an environment in which the axis of evil will be eliminated and the world will become a safer place. There is nothing in tangible terms you can say that what could be done. So one of the mistakes was that this concept should have been translated into an action plan. And the action plan which came, it was in the form of the UN resolutions, which was not implemented, which was totally violated. It was said that the countries which give any support, any sanctuary, any safe passage to any terrorist of any country, whether with the knowledge or not, will be penalized for that. United States knew right from the beginning that is, these sanctuaries had been given by Pakistan. There was ample evidence at different stages, whether it was this thing in 2006, when Dadullah was eliminated, when there were a lot of other intercepts which came in 2007. But after 2003, there was no effort to contain. And let me tell you one small thing. Al-Qaeda in its history this is the second point which I was coming to, that wrong assessment of the antidotes. Now there is something which is more biological, I think more medical people, that if I have got an infection, you have to find out that, well, what is the antidote of this virus? Now, if there is an antidote of a virus which is of flu, probably does not necessarily work in case it is tuberculosis. Antidote of Al-Qaeda was not the degradation of its people, not the choking of its funds, not denying them the roots of their weapons. And that is where we all, people who deal with the security, went wrong. I'm not telling that it is the thing. These are the antidotes of ours. We will get choked in case you deny us our funds, you deny us our weapons, you deny us our trained manpower, or you degrade our leadership. We thought that since should it happen to us, we superimposed on that enemy. For them, what is important, one was the ideology. Nothing was done to provide a counter-Islamic ideology to meet the ideology of this variety of jihadi Islam. The second is the sanctuary. Al-Qaeda has survived only where they had the sanctuaries. It was 16 months' time that they had no sanctuary in the world. You know, Osama bin Laden, he had a sanctuary in Saudi Arabia. He had to flee. He had to go to Somalia. When it was this thing, there was a Western pressure, there was quite this thing on it. He got it when Taliban rule came in Afghanistan. When he became powerful, because there was a Taliban rule in Afghanistan, he got the sanctuary. When after 2001, for 16 months, there was a total this thing. See the papers, and I'm coming to that. What was written by Jawahari, that we might finish if we have got no base. And that's the time when he says that now that the Pakistanis have given us the base, we will be able to survive. You know, a virus can survive in a certain environment. A certain humidity level, a certain temperature, a certain this thing. You have to deny that virus those environments in which it can survive and it can proliferate. Probably that was done. So there is a very subjective, what I call it, as a subjective assessment of the antidote. Subjective assessment is that I think that, okay, if you give me a good glass of wine, probably I'll be very friendly with you. Well, probably that doesn't apply to Professor Mattu. And you think, since I think it happens to me, I think it happens to him as well. Everybody's poison is different. The third was that it was a disproportionate war. It was a disproportionate because your strengths, you were fighting on your strengths. But you did not degrade the strengths of the opponent. Your strengths were superior weapons, superior intelligence capability, greater money, greater international support. So you mobilized all these things. But what needs to be done to fight a battle and win a battle is, that is, you have got to degrade the strengths of the enemy, and that is their freedom to select the targets, their ability to surprise, their invisibility. And that probably could not be achieved. So in this new type of a war, these were the setting. Now let me explain to you why I agree with the minority view. In 2001, Al-Qaeda was confined to Afghanistan, had some influence in Saudi Arabia, and some small pocket in Somalia. When he issued his fatwa, when he issued his fatwa at that point of time, Al-Qaeda was not even known to most of the Islamic organizations. Today, the Al-Qaeda is present in its franchise forms from West Asia to Horn of Africa to Middle East to Levant, Mesopotamia, and all these countries, and it has got the striking capability which is very, very threatening. So its geography has really become international today. So in the this thing when we come, I'm going to come about these the various things when I come to this thing. But broadly, I'm telling that on one point, that while its geographical presence and ability to strike was confined only to a very, very small areas, today, even in countries like Jordan, which I think is one of the most liberal and a moderate country, there are about 2,500 people who have joined the Al-Nusra in Mosul. to fight in Syria, along with the ISIS, the Iraqi special things who are fighting at those things, and is an Al-Qaeda outfit. Secondly, there is no change in the strategic goal of Al-Qaeda, that is to establish an Islamic caliphate and oppose all those who are opposed to it. So that call of this thing has not been, they have not changed. Now they had a concept of a near enemy and a far enemy. The near enemy were the Islamic states where the apostate regimes were there which are not Islamic enough, who have to be changed. And the concept of far enemy was, that is, the people who are supporting these near enemies, that is United States and other democracies, they have to be degraded. So this concept of fight both in the near enemy and far enemy has not been abandoned, and in the process, they took the advantage of the Arab Spring, considering that this was the time to use it as a near enemies, these things, and really became the beneficiary of those movements, which were for liberty, which was for democracy, which was for removing the autocratic rulers. The net, whether it is in Libya, it is in Tunisia, now it is in Mali, of course in Egypt there has been a little the same because the army has taken over, but it's a temporary phenomenon. And there was no change about using terrorism as the tactics. Now, gentlemen, I'm going to share something very interesting, and which I think I consider very important. In 2002, Al-Qaeda realized that we are now going to be physically degraded. The West, led by US, is going to play on its strengths. And at that point of time, in 2002, a piece was written by Al-Jawahiri, who was the number 2 man at that time. And it's a pity that we all people in the security of these things, it was written in Arabic, did not take it seriously or did not go through it as seriously as possible. One of the important research organization has now made a paper on that how they have followed this thing, which we all missed out. And I'm going to take a small extract. I'm going to quote, want you to read this thing. In that project, or that research project, it says that I quote, "In the midst of the group's expulsion and defeat in Afghanistan, almost 12 years ago, Al-Jawahiri chartered a way forward unknown to the West and its security agencies. When everyone else believed that it was on the brink of annihilation, he made a new strategy. In December 2001, now, in an Arabic paper, now just see, the strikes have taken place in September 2001. In December 2001, in an Arabic paper, Al-Sharq Al-Aswad, he published in his article, which was this thing, The Knights Under the Prophets. And he said that, explaining how the small groups are now to be constituted, Al-Qaeda's central leadership to be disintegrated, and you harass the enemy and the democracies all over the world. Wherever there is an Islamic cause and Islamic discontent, convert into an Al-Qaeda's global strategy. We will integrate it later. Let them emerge. Now, probably it's a longish article. I think I happened to be in service when I missed it out. Firstly, I don't know Arabic, and secondly, probably bureaucracies work as bureaucracies do. We miss out the obvious sometimes and probably concentrate too much. Now, there was a strategy. There was a counter strategy. We were focusing only on what our own subjective view of international terrorism was. Now, we are just doing a stock taking. How about Afghanistan? That was the main physical theater on which the global war against terrorism was going to be fought. When the onslaught was there, what did the Taliban government say? Please talk to us. We are prepared to change. We are prepared to sever all our links with Al-Qaeda, not that they were telling the truth, but that is what was the offer. And the rest of the world, which India totally supported, there is no question. They have to be vanquished, degraded, dissipated. We can never trust them. What is the position today? From United States to government of Afghanistan to the government of Pakistan, everyone is trying to talk to the Taliban, and Taliban is dictating the terms. They put the board as the Emirate of Afghanistan and says that we'll talk to them. They say that you release the prisoners or you this thing like that. Nobody is now insisting even on conditionalities. The problem is that still you are not able to talk. What is the self-view of Taliban? They say, why should we talk? We are the victors. We will dictate the terms. If you are not going in 2014, you will go in 2016. If not 2016, 2018. We will dictate the terms and fight at our own terms, or rather settle it on our own terms. All trying to engage them, and they are not trying to engage. People talk about fragmentation in Taliban. Has anybody heard anyone talking anything against Mullah Umar or Quetta Shura? Not even a voice. Whether it is Sirajuddin Haqqani's group or it is Gulbuddin Hikmatiyah's group or anyone. They are different factions which are fighting for their geographies. Don't misunderstand it that there is this thing within the Taliban. People want some in Helmand areas, some people want predominance in the areas where the drugs are growing, some people want it in areas of Paktiya and Patikta, like Haqqani's groups and others. They want the dominations in that area, so that is the point of assertion. Not that the strategic goals or the tactical instruments, there is any divergence of view. So the central leadership of Mullah Umar and the Quetta Shura remains intact. Don't be this thing about it. Even Pakistan government, the US government, the Afghan government consider him to be the spokesperson, and that is when the policy of reconstruction and reconciliation was being talked about, it is the Mullah Umar who was the center of it. And when the Afghan Karzai's government wanted to talk to them, they wanted Mullah Baradar, who was in the Pakistan custody, or rather in a protective custody, that he had to be released. The third thing, alignment with Al-Qaeda is intact. That was the condition which on the paper, at least in 2001, they were telling. That is, Al-Qaeda happens to be here, we have got no alignment with them, but in any case, we will not give them any sanctuary at our place. Today, they are not telling that. Today, Taliban is not giving any assurance to the West or to the Pakistan. People are not even asking for it. Jawahiris are still in Pakistan. The United States is not able to do anything about it. So, in this setting after drawdown, what will be left with the government that comes in power after 2014 elections? And let us see how powerful those instrumentalities would be to contain international terrorism, where the entire money, the troops, the intelligence, international support, everything which is available to Afghanistan's government. And the second point which I had made, I would like to repeat that point about the legitimacy in the fourth generation warfare. That is most important. Now, what is the legitimacy that you have gained in the battle of legitimacy? United States is the most disliked country in Afghanistan and in Pakistan, for which they have done so much, sacrificed so many bodies, spent so much of your money, brought it to a level of social and economic development, but the legitimacy has not gone. Similarly in Pakistan. So, as I said, that the fourth generation warfare, which is in the civil society against other things, you have got to win the physical battle, but more importantly, you have got to win the battle of legitimacy. So we have been able not to win that, and that is why this is a question mark whether we are at this thing of winning the global war against terror. So now it's coming to the Afghanistan situation. That the political setting, very uncertain. We do not know what will the results after 2014. Whether Abdullah comes, or Jalmeh Rasool comes, or whether the cousin of Karzai comes. None of them would be able to stand against Taliban without the help of the United States and without the help of the US troops there. And Karzai, even to this date, Karzai is a creation. And Karzai would have never been in power anywhere in the world, but for the US support. Today, he is not prepared to sign on an agreement which has been agreed by him, which has been agreed by his parliament, which has been agreed by his cabinet, which has been endorsed by the lower zirga of the entire Afghanistan's tribes. He said, I will do it just before the elections. Elections are in April 2014. Now he has said it will be done after the elections. That is, United States is not even sure today whether they will be able to stay there or not, and if yes, on what terms. So they are asking and pressing. Even we are pressing, because the Americans think we have got a certain type of equation with Karzai, he doesn't match. So that is the greatest political investment that we have done on Karzai. He is not even prepared to sign an agreement and say yes or no. And if there is no, of course there won't be no, I know that. There won't be no. But it will be yes with such conditionalities. Please tell me when I should stop. And I think people can also tell me, say, topic one can go and talk about it. And even if it is, it will be difficult for them to undertake the drone attacks. And unless the specific permission is taken for that, situation not only in Afghanistan but also in Pakistan will become unmanageable. State of Afghanistan Army, 20% desertion rate every year. This will increase to at least 40 to 50% after American troops go. And when there will be not intelligence-led operations, which presently the American intelligence is able to provide, the casualties of the Afghan army will be much higher. You know, when you do not have intelligence-driven operation, actually the casualty of the troops as well as the civilians are very high. It is only when there are targeted operational intelligence-driven operations that the collateral damages are minimal. Rather than being surprised, you surprise. Now, what is this about Pakistan? The non-NATO partner of the United States. The country which probably was supposed to be the front line, on whose charge the United States in 2003 handed over Afghanistan to them, telling them that we have finished Taliban government, we have got the Al-Qaeda sorted out, we are leaving for Iraq, we will give you the money and we will give you all the military things, and invested very heavily in that country, $25 billion, and today the country is not even in a position to defend itself from the terrorists. It is facing an existentialist threat. Its internal situation is highly precarious, its economy is in doldrums, and there is a serious distinction within the government. And if you see the Economist of this week, where there's a good article, to fight or not to fight. That is the dilemma of Pakistan. If you fight, you are damned. Because then you will not be only fighting the Tehrik-e-Taliban in Pakistan and the groups aligned to that within Pakistan, but also tomorrow the Taliban groups when they take a certain foothold within Afghanistan. If you don't fight, and if you fight, then you make the common enemies on both sides. With the United States going, which they had been telling for long that we don't want drone attacks in public statements and others, they in private say that if the United States go, there are no drone these things, there is no intelligence these things, Pakistan will find it very difficult to survive. Pakistan army today is keen. You know, the very people whom they denied even the supply of basic supplies of food and rations to the American troops and held them for 3 months, 4 months, 6 months at a time on small provocation. Today we are finding it difficult that how they are going to fight. The Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, who had all the support of the Islamists in their campaigning and others, he is insisting on the peace talks. Tehrik-e-Taliban in Pakistan is dictating the terms. They set the peace talks, they cut the 23 heads of the soldiers and put them on the roadside on 23rd of February. Next day they said, come for the talks. Army says we don't want to have the talks. They started the air strafing of it, the air bombing of it. Prime Minister stopped it. So the army is not on the same page as the civilian government. Not that the army was not supporting the terrorists. They are supporting Lashkar-e-Toiba, Harkat Mujahideen-e-Islami, Hizbul Mujahideen and others, which are targeting India. But in this battle they find that they have been caught in such a fire. That is, so the most important NATO ally, non-NATO ally of the United States is also sinking. And that is the one which is most important for the stability in Afghanistan. If that happens, the sinking of Afghanistan, the Islamists getting entrenching themselves there then makes it a much larger this thing. So after drawdown, what happens to Afghanistan? This thing. I know that I'm getting short of the time, but still I would like to mention a little this thing. In the Levant, there was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq. When Americans went there, they found it was only the local Baath party there. And then came the Musab Zarqawi's this thing, and he founded this thing, and then got himself affiliated to Al-Qaeda. Well, Zarqawi was killed. That's a great gain. From 2007 to 2008, there was just nothing. And then comes the ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, and which have taken over these things, and the sectarian fight has gone totally to this thing. And it is really not known that how this Zarqawi's government and this 25,000 insurgents of Zarqawi were defeated. It was not only with the support of the American army, it was the tribal Sunni Muslims who rose against them and fought against Zarqawi and able to defeat. Now today, in Mosul, they have made a base from where Al-Nusra, the new organization which on Jawahiri's command has been created in January 2012, launched their campaign within Syria. And now the Syrian leadership has been taken by them. And from there, they have made another Abdullah Azam brigade, which has been this thing in Lebanon. And for the first time now, they are telling that the ultimate common objective of this thing is to take over Jerusalem. It is the first time that in the Sinai desert, the Ansar al-Bayat has come. And they have been trained in Mali and brought over there. That this entire Levant region is getting this thing. Jordan, which had never been in this thing, has contributed 2,500 soldiers to join the Al-Nusra. Situation in, it's important, I like to write, in January 2014, Jawahiri sent a cable, which was this thing available to the people who have been keeping track of it, asked them to close their ranks, set stage for final takeover of Jerusalem. In Egypt, a pro-Al-Qaeda camp under Ansar Bayat, I think I mentioned it, Al-Maqdis. Al-Maqdis that is taking over the mosque of Jerusalem. So it's a much larger game. Now see, in Arab Peninsula, in Yemen they are common, in Algeria, and in the Saharan Desert and Mali, Morocco, we have got Al-Qaeda al-Maghrib, which was not there. In Somalia, we have got Al-Shabaab. Then in Nigeria, the Boko Haram, all Al-Qaeda affiliates which are operating in sea. What has been the total result of it? That is, since 2001, there had been 2,400 macro incidents. That is in which more than 10 people have died. And 43,000 people have been killed by Al-Qaeda and its affiliates. And 65,000 have been injured. But the highest number has been in last 2 years, when 16,000 have been killed, and the total incidents have been 7,000, including the minor and the major one. In 2001, 30% of the violence was attributed to the Islamic extremists. The rest of it was the various other insurgent groups and the terrorist factions. Today, it is 92% of all macro incidents which are related to Islamic terrorism, whereas others have gone into this thing. Now, I know that so I have slightly this at the time, but I would just like to sum up 2 or 3 small things. That if we think that we are better off than 2001, we will have to re-examine the whole thing in the total, think of the facts that we have got. There is an invisible but a definite connectivity between different factions of the Al-Qaeda which are operating in different parts of the world. They are not centrally controlled and governed as a centrist organization like Osama bin Laden would have thought, but they have got an ideological unity, they agree on the common tactics, and they provide each other the help and the tactical support. Second is this, that the new technological capabilities and the resources that they have got have made the task much more difficult to the security agencies and this thing. I do not know whether about the Malaysian aircraft, various theories are coming up, we do not know. Some people are telling it's a dry run. It will be hell of a new type of a thing. That is, you are having a dry run killing 239 persons for a dry run, including one of your own persons who could be a suicide dry runner thing. So, post-2014, the world may have to be prepared for handling a menace much greater in its expanse, much deeper in its intensity. And President Obama's assertion that the defeat of Al-Qaeda and Islamic terrorism is just around the corner, probably will have to be re-examined. Probably writing its obituary would be too premature. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Most grateful to you. And I think there are certain questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Doval, thank you for that rather pessimistic, extremely well thought out and comprehensive lecture. Now, I hope you're all not become even more concerned than was probably the intention. But Mr. Doval will take questions. Natasha is on the PTI, so remember that when you respond to that.
So my question for you is...
A little hard.
Okay, my question is, with election scene hotting up in India, we have election scene hotting up in India. We have seen, prominent faces now joining politics, including Nilekani, and also former IB head Sanjeev Tripathi joining BJP.
I know.
So, what is your take on that?
About terrorism. My take on that is a free country. If people want to join a political party, they are free to join. And that's very good that experienced people with knowledge are joining it. I only hope that it is with the intention of serving the nation and the society best, and not for any personal loss of office or something like that, etc. That should not be there. Otherwise, it's a good thing, because there should people from experience in public life, experience of international exposures to various security, strategic and other issues, coming and joining politics. I think it's a good thing for the Indian politics, because the domain has been for too long dominated by the people with a certain skills and knowledge and background. Let it be get more done.
I mean, was the intention of your question to ask Mr. Doval if he is joining politics?
Yes.
No. I have never joined politics. I think one of the papers which interviewed me has said that is, I have never joined any political party. I will never join any political party in my lifetime, because I don't have the make of that. But I would support the strong Indian nationalist cause to the extent I can, but not being part of any power structure, not being subservient to any ideology or other. That is something which I believe, and I would like to live life in my own terms. Because I don't have the make. I wish I had. I don't have the competence. I don't have the make.
As an aside, you don't have to belong to a political party to become, say, the National Security Advisor.
Ajit, would you say that the wheel has turned full circle in the sense that the start of global terrorism was with Taliban in Pakistan, which was financed by America, which was actually the brainchild of Pervez Musharraf? Started there, morphed itself into Al-Qaeda, became a decentralized organization as it exists today, and now will come back to power in Afghanistan.
Well, I can agree with the formulation that the wheel has turned full circle, but I only say wait for another 1 year. The full circle is that America took the support of Pakistan and created the Islamic warriors to defeat the Soviets in Afghanistan. And after their exit, if they again depend on Pakistan to contain the forces of radical Islam and jihadi forces, probably the wheel would have gone the full circle.
Yeah, you see, when...
Because after all, who is going to do that? Indians aren't going to do that. Iran is not going to do it. Central Asia is not going to do it. And it is only Pakistan. Now, today, there is a change. Americans don't trust Pakistan anymore. But the fact remains that they have limited their options to that extent, that it is going to become difficult.
They do not trust them, but they do ignore, to a very large extent, anti-Indian activity, which has been going on since the time of the Soviet occupation.
That's a subject by itself. We can have another talk about how India comes in the triangle and how India handles it. But let me tell you one thing, that this triangle can come, but there is one thing. If everybody decides, Pakistan also today is very, very vulnerable. Pakistan in its history has not faced an existential threat as it is facing today. If Pakistan can be brought on board, not as an ally, but given the part of an action plan in which what is that we would like India to do, Pakistan to do, Iran to do, United States to do, probably we can work it out. And it should focus on one thing: deny the sanctuaries. Let there be no one who has got a sanctuary in your land. And this movement can be contained. If you have got a sanctuary, money will come from a source that you cannot imagine. The very people who are your supporters, the very people whom you are funding and financing and politically building, they may be the one who are resourcing those very people who are your justice. So make it mandatory, and I think that is the way out. But anyway.
Yeah. Shantanu and then
Hi sir, my name is Shantanu. My question is that you mentioned about developing a counter ideology to sort of have a counter Islamist ideology, but what are the challenges to it? Because even the Islamist ideology, it's not a homogeneous ideology. So political Islam in one part, it is dividing, and say in Egypt, and in the example of Tunisia, it is almost bringing people together. So how do you develop that? What are the challenges to developing it, since it is not a homogeneous ideology, and even all Islamist organizations do not only believe in violence. So,
Presently, this entire movement is being distinct by the Salafi ideology, which was the sense of Ibn Battalib's take, this thing, when he was an intellectual of the 12th century in Turkey. Now, in 12th century, what happened was that the Mongols converted to Islam and started killing all the Muslims. And the Abbasid empire which was there, that was being massacred by the Muslims. At that point of time, Abu Taniba gave us this thing, that is, we have got to start a new set of this thing, and later that converted, and then the Wahhabullah and Waliullah, etc., that came, and that is how the Wahhabism came. Now, there is a very subtle continuous stream starting from the 12th century, which had been subscribing to this thing. And even in that 12th century, that man was in a minority, he was imprisoned, spent about 20 years in jail, because the majority of the Islamic world did not approve of it. Even today, majority of the Islamic world does not believe in this variety or this interpretation of Islam. Now, there is that commonality of the common thread that is going through this, whether it's a Lashkar-e-Toiba or whether it's this thing like that, which some people at times mistake to be a Deobandi school. Actually, it is in divergence of the Deobandi school. There were a point of convergence of the Deoband and Wahhabism up to on certain issues, but Wahhabis today are totally opposed to the Deobandis. And so, if there is a counter ideology when I say that most powerful is this thing, except that the government of Saudi Arabia has been supporting it and funding it, and some people in Kuwait and some people in the Gulf. And the big people with the big money had been behind supporting this ideology, and the new madrasas and the new mosques which have come in different parts of the world, which are the Salafi, this thing, which there are a lot of indigenous, for example, in India, we have got a very powerful Barelvi movement. We have got a very powerful Deobandi movement. We have got a very powerful these other movement who are threatened and who are extremely this thing. They are issuing fatwas against it in all their congregations. That is about 94% of the Indian Muslim organizations have been telling that this is extremely dangerous for Islam. We are opposed to it. The thing is that the state has not been able to use it to its best advantage. And same is in Pakistan. In Pakistan also 65% are the Barelvis, and remaining 20% are this thing. But these people are now so better resourced, and they have got the firepower that this Salafi Islam is getting a precedent over that. And in an Islamic culture, it is possible that the coercive power is more than the persuasive power.
Nirupma Subramanian is our emerging leader fellow. She is an editor with the Hindu group of newspapers and has served as a correspondent in Colombo and Islamabad.
Much after Mr. Doval.
Much after your undercover presence in Pakistan.
Alleged.
And only your paper writes things like that. Not only your paper, but I think other papers have also been writing. But no, it's nothing as undercover. The only thing is this, that is, for doing any job, you have got to fit yourself that you are able to do this thing. And the first task of an intelligence officer is access. How do you find an access to an interface point in something that you are interested in? Now, if the access is through a door which is only 2 feet by 2 feet, you have to cut yourself to that side. If there is something that you have to find an access, you have to find an access. After you find the access, then you have got to establish yourself, your legitimacy, your credibility. So you try to establish your credibility. It is nothing. It was started 3,000 years back by Chanakya. It is coming today into this thing. I think the world over for centuries this has been done by the... It is one profession like any other profession. Like you are one of the most renowned journalists, you've got a great paper, but you've got your own tricks of the trade. So everybody develops those tricks of the trade. To some people, it comes a little more naturally. People who are a little mischievous and fun-loving, they probably enjoy doing things.
So, can I ask my question? Considering that we are living in such a dangerous neighborhood, how well are Indian security agencies prepared? How well is the Indian system prepared for what's going to fall out of Afghanistan after, Can I just finish? And how do we do it without actually alienating our own diverse populations? I mean, our own Muslim population, especially in the context of who might emerge as the winner of the next election. I mean, how do we stitch all this together at this time?
As far as the capabilities of Indian system are concerned, and this is not that I'm telling you because you may say that since I belong to that and I will defend it, and therefore you may believe it or you may not believe it, but I'm trying to be as objective, as academic, as this thing as possible. Indian security systems capabilities are extremely high, and should Pakistan support Taliban and export them to India, we would be able to deal with them.
Sorry?
We will be able to deal with them, just no problem. India has been fighting terrorism and insurgencies for a long time. We have not given even a half an inch. As far as their political demands are concerned, we might have made some tactical retreats, which might have meant releasing some prisoners here or releasing some this thing like that, whether it was an insurgency in the northeast or whether it was a left-wing extremism or whether it was Sikh problem or whether, Khalistan problem, not Sikh problem, Khalistan problem, or anything. Indian state has got the capacity. Question is of the political will. And should there be a political will, this is achievable. Just don't bother about the Indian interests. On that count, be completely reassured. Of course, we'll have to develop certain tradecraft, we'll have to develop certain capabilities, we'll have to train people, we'll have to motivate people. We'll have to have the right people in the right places, particularly at the leadership levels, which at times get politically distinct, and therefore we don't get really an opportunity to the best people to really lead in different positions. Otherwise, do you know the amount of attrition that the Indian security forces take? Nowhere in the world people take so many people, so many dead bodies of the security agencies as they do in India. Not a whimper anywhere. Nobody says that how so many policemen or paramilitary forces or the army has been killed, and well, let us withdraw, or let us come out of Kashmir, or let us have this thing. Nobody protests. Even the media does not say. It's a good thing. Country is prepared to give the sacrifice. People who are prepared to sacrifice themselves, they are invincible. Don't undermine your capacity to take the losses. Indian civilization has been able to take the onslaughts because its capability to take the sacrifices is unlimited. And we can wait 5 years, 50 years, 500 years. The game is not over till we win. So there's no question. Now coming to the second point about the sensitivity of the Muslim population. We don't have any Muslim population or a Hindu population. When it comes to a war against terror, it is an attack on India. So the first thing that one should be listing is that we should stop thinking in communal lines. The Muslims are with us in fight against terror much more than any Hindu organization is. You tell me any Hindu organization which has issued a fatwa or a diktat or this thing against terrorism. It is on the Ramlila ground with 50,000 Maulanas who passed a fatwa against international terrorism and terrorism in 2012 and said that we are going to oppose it. They have offered total help, and it is a huge complication. They wanted some Hindu organizations also to come on the same platform. They said it will endanger them. So don't say. It is the violent, coercive, vocal minority which sometimes is misunderstood as this voice of Islam. The voice of Islam is not for criminality, the voice of Islam is not for killing the innocent, and the majority of the Indian Islam is totally in support of it. We had global recruitment when there was this thing against Soviets in Afghanistan. Not even one from India went. We have the second, or rather even the first, largest population of Muslims in India. From countries as distant as Australia and all over the places, 1 or 2 or 10 or 10,000 went in that jihad, but not even one Indian Muslim volunteer for that. So let us not this thing, we start seeing the ghost as if it's a communal problem. It's not a communal problem. It's a question of the national security. In India, it's not the first time. We had the movement when we had this thing in when the Battle of Plassey took place in 1762. And there was a group which went to the Balakot. And the Britishers asked them, you take on this thing like that and call it as an operation against the Hindus. It was only immediately that they felt that is the Muslim, that the Hindus and Muslims are going to fight the British together. There was such a minority that there was a fatwa here. And this very people that we are talking about, the Devbandis, they were the one who took the lead in that and finished all of them. And after that, they were sent and banished in Malta. And that is why they are known as the prisoners of Malta. The forefather or the founder of the Devbandi school. So the amount of sacrifices that the Muslims did for Indian independence struggle is no less than what the Hindus did, or any other community did, Sikhs or anyone. So Indian Islam has got to be understood and analyzed in a very, very different context. It is only in post-1957, this thing, and the creation of the media that we are talking about Islamic this thing or this thing. Where is the Islamic this thing with Osama bin Laden or with the killers or the murderers or this thing like that? There's no question. And even if there are few, they will be totally in minority, and those who have been subverted or this thing for some vested interest from the Pakistanis.
Just to follow, if you were to become the NSA, what are the 5 steps that you take?
No, I don't think that is a question relevant, because I don't think that anybody is going to have a man like me as an NSA.
But hypothetically, what would be?
Yeah, what would be 5 steps?
What should be the agenda?
Yeah, to secure India.
No, I don't think that is a very hypothetical question. You become the Prime Minister, then what will you do?
You have to talk to young Muslim people
But
to realize
what George W. Bush told Bob Blackwell when he appointed him as ambassador to India. He said, 1 billion people, a democracy, 150 million Muslims, and no Al-Qaeda. Wow. Sorry.
Thank you, sir. Sir, my question follows from what people have been asking. One is, if I can ask you to do a little bit of crystal gazing and tell us exactly about what you think will be the challenges to India on terrorism, because we are talking about homegrown terror a lot, right, in the last few years. And absolutely following up from what Nirupma just asked, so I'm not asking, I know you don't want to be a politician, but in terms of intelligence agency itself in India, which has faced a lot of flack since what happened in Mumbai and subsequently the other attacks, what is going to change? What would you advise would be the one significant change that India's intelligence agency needs to do?
In fact, if I could add to
No, the point is that your question was very understandable till the last. How do I, as an individual matter?
No, but sir, you worked with the
I'll add to that, because there's a debate now, including a private member's bill, which suggests there should be oversight on the intelligence agencies. And there has to be a certain amount of not just financial, but accountability in a real sense. How do you ensure that the secrecy and discretion, which are important elements of any intelligence agency, are balanced with a certain degree of responsibility and accountability?
Now, I'll take the first question about the Indian response to the terrorism threat within the country. I think we have to take a series of steps. We have to first establish the legitimacy of the state, which I said that the fourth generation warfare is the testing of that. We've got to make it very clear that there is no question of sparing anyone, appeasing anyone, not taking this thing like that. Law will take its course, but carry the minority community with us. There is no question of going to Azamgarh or releasing somebody in Delhi, this thing, and with the police officers at this Batla encounter and things like that. That not only sent the wrong signal, that makes it extremely difficult for both for the Muslims and for the security agencies. You are only making the Muslims vulnerable by that. So there is no question of that. We should talk to the ulamas. We should convince them, work out a joint strategy, make them partners in that, press into action an action plan, and it will be a joint plan. It is to protect them. And let me tell you one thing, the casualties of Islamic terrorism have been Muslims 90%, and 10% non-Muslims, and they are aware of it. Do you know who was the latest intercept on the basis of which came the paper? I don't have any. On the basis of which the security has been provided? It is all top Indian Islamic leaders who are in the target list of the Indian Mujahideen, who are being supported by this. What was the question that Pervez Musharraf asked when he was addressing a conclave in Delhi to the chief of Deoband? He said that, are you happy with your plight in Delhi, in India? Are you satisfied? And what is the response that he said? He said, every Indian Muslim is much more happier than any Pakistani Muslim. You take care of your house. Don't bother about us. We are quite capable of that. You know, these small things are lost sight of. It is in this thing of the full camera. Pervez Musharraf addressing a conclave, all top elite being there and things like that. The top Maulana of the country who is considered to be on the side of the extremists. This is what the response he gives to live to Pervez Musharraf. Now, don't underestimate it. So, make them the partners. And they are willing partners. They have been willing partners in the history, they will be the willing partners in the future. Don't make them something as your vote bank. Don't think that this is something that we have got to use it for political purposes. We have got to use them for the national purpose. They are more nationalist than anybody else. It is only when you use them for the political purpose, they say that, well, we made you the king and what have you given us in return? Then you are doing a trade-off with them. When you do the trade-off, well, you are always an happy man. If I say that, well, I'll give a lecture for this thing and, well, he will pay me some money. If it doesn't, I'm unhappy with him. But if I say, well, it's this thing like that, so you create expectations. You create the expectations of every Muslim in India. That is, he should see a powerful, developed India where there are equal opportunities, there are better living conditions, there is freedom, there is this thing. Let every Indian get it. And it is not something which is a very difficult message to convey. It's only that repeated elections that we keep on this thing, and then we create a sense of victimhood to gain the support. You first make me feel that I am victimized. And then any small thing that happens, you say that you are a victim. And then if I feel victim, then I think I am vulnerable. If I think I am vulnerable, then he is able to exploit. I am not a victim. It is my country. If I am Muslim, so what? I will defend it as much as this thing. In 1857, who all won? Who all fought? It was the Muslims who fought as much as the Hindus.
Also, 26/11 was a military operation.
But we have two or three, so we'll take them together. Professor Ratna Ghosh first, and then the ladies.
And let me tell you one small thing. Now that I have been exposed as a man who is this thing, the number of persons that ISI has recruited for intelligence tasks in India, there have been more Hindus than Muslims. If you see all the number of cases from 1947, which have been these things under the official secret side of the counter-espionage cases, I think people in media must be these things, that all these cases which come, so more than 4,000 cases, probably not even 20% would be Muslims. So it's a very wrong concept. We will carry the Muslims with us and we will make it a great country.
Okay. Professor Ratna Ghosh, the lady here and the gentleman in the back.
You mentioned counter-terrorism ideologies, but you did not talk about counter-terrorism strategies that countries are using, and the fact that they're not very comprehensive, these strategies. Because countries like Britain use education as a very important counter-terrorism strategy, whereas countries like Canada don't even mention it in their counter-terrorism, policies. So can you just...
You know...
We'll take one or two questions.
No, I think that they will get mixed up. The small ones. Terrorism is a tactics. The strategy of the people who want to achieve some particular political and ideological objective, by using these tactics, use it. So when you will be talking about strategy, counter strategy, you will not be talking about terrorism. Then you have got to talk about the entire ideology for which, or the entire political objective that has to be fought. Now let me explain it. Kashmiri, some people take up weapons and resort to terrorism as a tactics to get Kashmir amalgamated with Pakistan. Strategy will be the total about Kashmir. It will not only be about how to fight Salahuddin. Because terrorism is a tactic, one particular tactic. You can have many tactics to achieve your that political goal. You know, I may have some objective to take over this building. I can use weapons, I can use my money, or I can use my influence, or I can use my this thing like that. It's a tactics. So when you say the counter-terrorism strategy, there cannot be counter-terrorism strategy. There can be counter-terrorism tactics. But there can be a counter-terrorism, there could be a strategy against the political objectives and the tactics, which involve the tactics also. So it will, like say Osama bin Laden or Al-Qaeda, what is the strategy against Al-Qaeda? Which will include military action, which will include intelligence action, which may include diplomatic action, which may include the economic action, it may include the religious action, it may include many things. So the strategy will have to be in that context. Sorry for that.
Okay. And please introduce yourself.
My question is actually about...
Please introduce yourself as well.
I'm Chitra Sudarshan. I actually wanted to ask about homegrown terrorism, the Indian Mujahideen and the Simi. And actually, I was wondering if you could throw some light on the Karachi project, as it was called, Pakistan's ISI strategy to actually use this discontent to foment terrorism within India. I mean, as an intelligence person, how successful this has been or how unsuccessful it's been.
Okay. You know, when Pakistan first started its covert action against India, it started on the Islamic front, it started with Kashmir. So in the first phase, it tried to entice the youngsters from Kashmir, train them and send them back. And in that, there were many organizations which were operating there, which were having this thing. So Hizbul Mujahideen, Jamaat Islami was one of them. Jamaat Islami, not of India. Jamaat Islami J&K is different from Jamaat Islami India. And the boys that they sent, on the basis of that, they created Hizbul Mujahideen. And similarly, there were other groups, the People's Conference, and then it became Al-Wadar, other organizations, there is things like that. They individually started weaponizing them and training them and asking them to indulge into competitive violence and killing. In 1995, they realized that they are not getting sufficient support or are not able to take the fight to that level where they could project it as a fight of independence in this thing. So they started inducting the Pakistanis and Afghans and other nationalities into that, and they came at that time under this thing of Harkatul Ansar and later Lashkar-e-Toiba. So they started coming and the depredations were done by them. When they started the depredation, actually the support level for these foreign terrorists became much less. But the violence levels went up. When the violence levels went up, Pakistan realized sometimes in around 2000 that at this level, India is, for us, it is not getting any this thing because it's only the Kashmiris who are dying. If India has to be pressurized, the hinterland has got to be made the target. When this question came that the hinterland is made target, then only this thing could be this thing. Then the question came that how do we get this thing? And in 2001, and the second point that came is that Pakistan thought that at this level of deniability, we cannot operate after 2001. So they started recruiting the boys from a group which had been expelled from the Jamaat-e-Islami, main India, which was known as Simi. Now, when Simi started indulging in some of these activities, even the Simi's group, which was slightly hardcore, disowned them, and then Indian Mujahideen was created in 2005. Now, with this group, there was one A.M. Bashir from Kerala who was this thing, and then he was brought, he was taken to Dubai, and then Dawood Ibrahim trained him and got this thing like that, and the IM was started this thing, and the training of the Indian Muslim youth started there. At that point of time, they felt that if they have got to operate in India's mainland, they should know Urdu. They should be able to distinguish the lifestyle of what the Hindi belt is there. And the main thing in Pakistan where this thing was Karachi. So I say that rather than launching them from Kotli or Muzaffarabad and others which were being done earlier for this thing, they started a hub in Karachi. Now that Karachi hub of the ISI had stayed, but which was India specific, was this thing that the Karachi, the people were started getting this thing from Karachi, and the boys who were coming from India for training, etc., they were being briefed in Karachi, they were being trained at different other places, but were this thing on that. Now, when the Karachi project was this thing, the most trusted organization of the ISI within Pakistan was the Lashkar-e-Toiba. So this Karachi project came under the control of the this thing, and there were a large number of Muhajirs and others and things like that. So Lashkar-e-Toiba. So when this 2611 was launched in Mumbai, it was the Karachi project which had been in existence for some time. It is not the name of that project which is the Karachi project. It is the project of focusing on the mainland of India. When it was Kashmir, it was Muzaffarabad. Or in the jungles of forgetting the name of that place, Changamanga and things like that, etc., that these boys were coming. From Karachi, these people were this thing, and with the control centers. Now, they were being trained, they were being indoctrinated at different places, but the control center was there, and Iqbal Chima from Bahawalpur was the man who was in charge of it, and Zarar Shah became the main person who became this thing. And Hafiz Saeed was Punjabi speaking, was Lahore based and things like that, etc. He remained the overall supremo and things like that, etc. 2611 was taken over by the Karachi project. Now, in this Karachi project, there were the ISI people and the Lashkar-e-Toiba people working in tandem. When 2611 was going on, the control room was there in the Karachi, this thing, and in that, the live conversation of the ISI army officers telling them that kill this thing, don't leave Americans, don't leave this thing, don't leave Jews, and all, all this started, they are all on record, and that is evidence we give to Pakistan. In which there was Brigadier Chaudhry, this thing was there, Mr. Aslam, this thing was there, Mr. Salim was there. Zarar Shah's talks were there, on the basis of which Zarar Shah is still in jail. But, so this is what the total composition of the Karachi project is there. They have still not wound up, they have changed the location, they think that the Indian intelligence doesn't know the location, but I don't think that is the game that Pakistan ISI can have at this thing, but they will continue to do that.
Last question, yes.
Yeah, just in your opinion, is it worth the US continuing with their program of using drones when you said their largest problem is they struggle for legitimacy?
I can hear you very clearly.
He says, do you think that the US should continue using drones? Presumably because that kind of creates the kind of illegitimacy which you talked about. Is that
yeah, that's essentially it.
If you're fighting a fourth generation,
I think it's a very important question and a very interesting question. It is important because it is the use of drones which have added to the unpopularity of the United States, both in Pakistan and Afghanistan. It is important because if you don't use them, you have got specific intelligence where you can take the targeted person, and the Pakistan security agencies are not prepared to support you. You cannot undertake the Abbottabad type of an operation every second day. Because the problem about drone attack is that collateral damages are high. And at times the innocent people get killed. And therefore there is a lot of these things on that. But even if there are non-drone attacks and no collateral damages are there, Pakistan people did not support the Abbottabad operation also to a very large extent. The opposition was equally there. So even if you do not take drone attack, say I say that okay, I will not go for a technical drone attack, 10 people will die. I am prepared to die myself, I will take on that. And I take a helicopter and land it. And neutralize specific terrorist target. And no innocent is killed. Still you are posing it as much as that. The main thing is this, that if the Pakistani security forces are able to establish their credibility, that they can be dependent upon, you share the intelligence, we will take the action, that is the best option. So it is a difficult question on both sides.
Thank you so much, Mr. Doval, for not just enlightening us about our present-day vulnerabilities, but giving a comprehensive picture of the way in which Al-Qaeda has refranchised itself under a different brand name, as it were, and how frightening the overall scenario could be. We are very grateful that you took this trip from Delhi during a very important time in India when the elections are happening and when the debates on these issues are being hotly contested. Thank you. And we look forward to welcoming you again. Thank you, Chair, thank you, Ravi. Thank you, all of you, for being here. Tomorrow at the same time, the same location, we'll have the second Global Challenge orations by Sunita Narayan. Sunita Narayan of the Center for Science and Environment, and she'll speak on how India's growth and India's environmental problems need not be in conflict. So please come tomorrow to hear that.